barrier, a watertight membrane, which protects the body from substances that can interfere with it.
This is red wine. It smells rather nice, and I'm sure it's the product of years of hard work and experience. But I'm not going to drink it. I'm going to send it off to be evaporated.
Alcohol has a lower boiling point than water, so gently heating the wine in a rotary evaporator turns it into a vapor which rises and can be collected. Alcohol is packed with energy.
Here it is. Back again, smelling completely different. And by now, it should be almost pure alcohol. And if we dim the lights down, we should be able to see it burn.
Every quarter ounce releases 7 calories of energy, so drinking adds calories to our diet. But energy is not why most of us drink. Alcohol's popularity comes from what it does to our brains. Which means around the world, almost every culture has invented its own unique alcoholic drink. Northern Peru is no exception. The locals here have produced an extraordinary brew called Masato. These are the Concha people. They've been here for over 700 years. And throughout their history, they have improvised a unique way to produce a steady stream of alcohol. Like all cultures, they use what's on hand. And for them, that's the root of the yucca plant.
Hello.
Today, Michael's joined them to help make the next batch of Masato. Once the yucca roots are peeled, they're boiled to soften them up. Then they're crushed.
Don't have me a good laugh, but don't tell me what show it's about. All yours.
Michael's hoping he'll be better at the next bit, when they add the other crucial ingredient. Spit.
More. Yes, that's how it's done. Apparently this is normally just female-only activity. I'm not sure adding a bit of sort of gringo male spec to it is adding to the flavour. This may look absolutely disgusting, but it's actually part of the process because the saliva is actually an intrinsic part of the whole thing. What happens is the saliva in your mouth contains an enzyme called amylase, and this stuff is all starch. What the amylase does is it breaks down the starch and releases the sugars inside it. If you've ever stuck a cracker in your mouth and left it there, or perhaps you stuck some white bread in your mouth and left it there, what you'll notice over a little while is it starts to taste rather sweet. And that's because the amylase in your mouth is breaking down starches and releasing the sugar. So you have to stick it in, run it round, amylase springs into action, and run, you got it out.
The point is to get some sugar. Once we have sugar, all we need to turn it into alcohol is a little fresh air. That's because our atmosphere contains many forms of tiny single-celled microorganisms, including yeast. When one of these yeast cells lands on the chewed yucca, it starts to feed on the sugar and begins to multiply. It's a process called fermentation. The yeast starts digesting the sugars in the yucca. In the process, each sugar molecule is converted into 4 smaller molecules, 2 of carbon dioxide and 2 of alcohol as waste. The small size of the alcohol molecule is crucial to our enjoyment. Being small helps it pass through the watertight blood-brain barrier and straight into the brain itself.
Now, fermentation is at the heart of lots of the things we love. Not just booze, but chocolate, yogurt, and of course, bread. Now, with bread, the product of fermentation that you really want is not the alcohol, but the carbon dioxide, because that's what makes it rise and produces that lovely spongy texture. There is a small amount of alcohol in the dough, but that gets evaporated off when the bread is baked.
Yet in Masato, it's all about the alcohol, and it's beginning to build. But there's a limit to how strong it can become. After about a week, the alcohol level reaches around 6%, and it becomes concentrated enough to poison many types of yeast, which die. And that in turn slows the fermentation process. And it's at this point it's ready to enjoy. The villagers have invited Michael to share a meal with them. And that also means sampling some of their Yucca beer.
Right, okay. So, moment of truth. I'm a little apprehensive. Wasn't what expecting. It's kind of got a bit of an alcoholic kick to it, and it's quite bitter. It's almost sort of yogurty. ¿Cuál de esos tomas?
Anoche tú quieres.
Okay.
Todos los días.
Todos los días.
Todos los días. You drink it pretty well every day. Muchas gracias. En inglés decimos cheers. Cheers? Cheers. Salud. Got it. It's not terribly alcoholic. I guess it's probably about 4 or 5%. So I suspect if you drink enough of it, you get fairly jolly. That's
After a few bowls, Michael's starting to feel the effects.
when it gets into your bloodstream, it hits your brain, and there it really starts to do the business. Because one of the things it does is it affects a neurotransmitter called GABA.
GABA is a neurotransmitter or chemical messenger that's present throughout the brain. Normally, it regulates the brain's activity. Its function is to act rather like a brake on brain cells, stopping them from firing at the wrong time. But alcohol interferes with this system. The more we drink, the more receptive our brain cells become to GABA. As the potency of GABA increases, so does the dampening effect on the brain, switching off areas one by one. At first, this can make us feel liberated, excited, amusing because the alcohol starts by switching off the areas that control our inhibitions.
Yeah, that and so.
These regions have brain cells with the greatest number of GABA receptors, so they're most sensitive to the effects of alcohol. The emotional regions are next to be suppressed. They have almost as many GABA receptors. They are followed by our motor control region, and then memory. Finally, when we are blind drunk, we are left with only the basic parts of our brain operating. They have the least GABA receptors, and fortunately, they go on keeping us breathing and our heart beating, even when we are unconscious. But Michael's not at that stage tonight.
Okay.
Most of the time, alcohol just inhibits our brains enough to loosen our inhibitions and make us more sociable, at least when drunk in moderation. Which is perhaps why it's been embraced by many cultures around the world. Our relationship with food is incredibly complex. Yet we now understand how our experience of food is fundamentally intertwined with our brain.
That's intense.
How certain foods can directly affect it at the molecular and cellular level. It's part of our evolutionary story. We indulge our senses, which in turn reward us with feelings of pleasure, keeping us coming back to the table for more. Meanwhile, around the world, food scientists will continue to delve into the chemistry and biology of our food to try and understand how it works in our bodies and on our minds. And all the while, our love affair with food continues to evolve.
And that's because we're constantly pushing the barriers, looking for new ways to stimulate our incredibly demanding human brains.
How often do you stop and really think about your food? Why does it taste the way it does? And how does it affect your body and your mind? In search of answers, two experts will take you on a global culinary adventure. Medical Dr. Michael Mosley
We humans aren't peculiar. We eat foods no other animal would eat.
and botanist James Wan
Ultimately, our bodies and everything we are comes from our plates.
will discover the hidden science in every mouthful.
Look at all this lovely fat and sugar. Yummy.
This time, they're on a mission to reveal the mysteries of taste.
The aroma compounds waft up the back of your nose.
Why some tastes are pure joy, while others revolt. And they'll discover how our sense of taste and smell has evolved. So we not only enjoy our food, but are protected from tastes that could harm us.
This is delicious science.
Flavor makes our food delicious. Each flavor is a potent combination of aroma and taste molecules. Get that combination right, and food tastes heavenly. But what is taste? To explore that, Michael's going to take a look at Thai cuisine. Thai food is particularly good at exciting our full range of taste receptors, and all on one plate.
So this is a Thai stir fry, and I'm very fond of Thai. There is a bit of fried chicken, lemon, garlic, onion, a real sort of explosion of taste. It's really strange to think that all these sensations which are going on in my mouth at the moment are generated by 5 simple tastes.
In front of Michael are 5 liquids containing chemicals that will trigger each different taste. He has no idea which is which.
Salty, that's definitely salty. Sweet. That is sort of bitter, a bit like coffee. And this is similar, but more lemony and makes your mouth pucker up. This is sour. And this one is really hard to describe. This is the taste that has been most recently discovered. This is umami.
The word umami is a derivation of the Japanese word for a pleasant, savory taste.
And it is very, very strange to think that every taste sensation you ever have will consist of one or more of these tastes.
The sensations happen here, on the surface of the tongue. The tongue holds around 4,000 taste buds. Inside them are the 5 taste receptors. In humans, this is where taste begins. Evolution underpins our relationship with food. But why these 5 tastes? What is their purpose? To find out, Michael is going to start by looking at the taste that's most recently been discovered. He's traveled here to Buñol, Spain, to participate in an extraordinary celebration of the world's most popular fruit, which is rich in umami.
I'm here in southern Spain with about 20,000 other people to celebrate the tomato.
It's been running for over 70 years, and it's thought it started with a street fight that was so much fun, the locals decided to do it again the next year, and the next. As well as making a perfect food missile, tomatoes carry a heavy punch of umami. But what exactly is umami? And why does it have such a powerful hold over us? The answer is inside the tomatoes. To get at the umami, Michael is going to blend them, then spin them at high speed in a centrifuge, filter, then finally stir and simmer to concentrate the taste.
After all that boiling down, this is all that's left. And it no longer smells tomatoey at all because those volatile flavours have been boiled off. And this stuff doesn't taste tomatoey either. It tastes salty, earthy, meaty.
What Michael's tongue is sensing is a chemical known as glutamate. It's an amino acid, a type of molecule derived from the protein in the tomato. Whenever you get glutamate in food, it triggers that umami taste. And it's a flavor we enjoy so much, it actually fuels a desire for more umami-rich food. It's our love of the glutamate in tomatoes that has made them such an important crop for this region. It's found here in the ancient oak forests of southwest Spain, home of the chunky local pig known as the pata negra. The pigs roam freely, foraging for whatever they can find, but their favorite treats are the acorns that fall from the oaks every winter. And it turns out that pigs and acorns are a match made in heaven. To Together they make the most delicious and most expensive umami-packed ham in the world. Iberico ham. It's early morning in January. Acorn season is coming to an end, and the Marquez family is preparing for one of their most important events of the year. In this part of Spain, the annual killing of a pig is a major event. It's known as a matanza, and it involves the gathering of an entire family. This ancient rural tradition dates back to a time when the pig would be expected to provide sustenance for the family for months. The process involves not just the slaughter of a pig, but also the preparation and seasoning of the meat. After the slaughter, it will take the family the entire day to turn over 300 pounds of pig into enough meat to keep them going all year.
This ham will be the best because of the fat.
The secret to the intense umami taste begins with the extraordinarily thick layer of fat, which comes from the acorns the pig enjoyed in life. The acorn fat is rich in oleic acid, the same fatty acid that is found in olives. Pata Negra pig is able to eat an incredible 22 pounds of acorns every day, meaning their bodies become saturated in the oleic acid from the acorns. Nothing of the pig will go to waste, but it is the hind legs that will be transformed into the umami-rich ham. Most hams end up here, in the darkness of an Iberian cellar. This is where biochemistry kicks in, and the exquisite umami taste forms. The surface of the hams are under constant attack. Microbes and oxygen in the air react with the fat on the outside, making it yellow and rancid, but the meat within is protected. The acorn-fed fat layer is so thick, it can keep the meat air-free for up to 3 years, much longer than any other ham. This allows the natural chemistry locked inside the cage to unfold. The meat starts to cure. Over the years, naturally occurring enzymes break the proteins in the meat down into their basic building blocks, amino acids. One of these is the all-important glutamate, the molecule responsible for the taste of umami. The longer meat cures, the greater the buildup of the glutamate, and the stronger the taste will become. And time is exactly what its thick, fatty case provides each ham. After up to 3 years, these hams have 50 times the glutamate levels of fresh meat, making them the world's finest, meatiest, most delicious, umami-tasting hams.
This is the fruits of our labor. We work hard all year, so we can eat well all year.
It's a taste prized by charcuterie connoisseurs the world over. But there's a biological reason why we are drawn to the umami flavor of glutamate.
So the reason why this ham is so delicious is because glutamate is one of the building blocks of protein.
And protein is essential to the building and running of every cell in our bodies.
So what the ham is really saying to me is, eat me because I will make you big and strong. And the way it sends that message is, of course, by my taste buds.
As food enters the mouth, it meets the tongue, a seething landscape of muscle covered by spiky papillae. These help move each mouthful of food around. As it swirls across the tongue, the food comes across larger, dome-shaped papillae. And here we find the taste buds. The glutamate enters each bud, where it encounters the 5 taste receptors. But the glutamate molecule has a distinctive shape that can only activate the umami receptor, sending a signal to the brain that tells us, that mouthful of food is absolutely delicious. We're hardwired to enjoy the taste of umami because it signals the protein we need to build our bodies. But we can't survive on protein alone. We would grind to a halt without a ready supply of energy. So James is investigating another taste receptor that fires off whenever it encounters the chemicals that give us a quick energy hit.
When you bite into a strawberry, if you had to pick one word to describe its taste, you'd probably pick sweet. And that's how our bodies detect the amount of sugar that's in fruit.
But sugar in nature seldom comes on its own. It's usually balanced by another taste, the taste of acid.
I'm going to show you that with a fantastically geeky piece of kit here. This is a pH meter, and it detects how acid solutions are. You've got pure water on one end, which is 7, and hydrochloric acid as 1, about as acidic as it gets.
James is going to test a range of fruit.
Get some of that juice out.
To find out where they fit on the scale, starting with a strawberry.
Yeah, it's going down. For something that most people describe as sweet, this is pretty acidic stuff. Look at that. 3.5. Right there.
Watermelon is less acidic at 5.5, while orange is the same as strawberry.
3.5 again. Last up, grapefruit. 3.52. So this is quite odd. All this fruit is the same pH, yet people describe strawberries as tasting sweet, despite having a similar amount of acid.
Strawberries have a cunning ability to hide their acidity. So why produce it in the first place? James has come to the strawberry fields of Kent, England, to find the answer.
Strawberry plants have specifically evolved this sweet, succulent fruit here to encourage animals to eat them. And that's because when these seeds pass through the digestive tract of an animal, they're deposited with a bit of fertilizer far and wide, helping the strawberry's empire grow. The thing is, that only works when the seed is fully mature and ready to sprout. Until that point, they're not sweet at all. In fact, they're packed full of acid, making them taste sour. It's an animal deterrent.
The mild acidic solution from the unripened fruit washes over the tongue, stimulating the sour receptors. The brain interprets this taste as unpleasant and a sign that the food could be spoiled or unfit to eat. It's a biological reaction that plants use to their own ends. A taste strong and repellent enough to put most animals off. But just at the right moment, when the plant's seeds have matured, it needs to mask the acidity to be more palatable. All the acid is still there, but the fruit becomes flooded with sugar, produced when hormones from the seeds announce they are ready to be eaten. The sugars react with other plant molecules and make attractive red pigments that say, "Eat me."
I know you're not supposed to eat them until you've paid, but that's the point. They are irresistible.
The plant, having sacrificed some sugar, gets its seed spread. And in return, the diner gets a sugar reward. But the strawberry is sneaky, because we may not be getting as much sweet sugar as we think. Ripe strawberries taste sweeter than blueberries, even though blueberries contain almost twice as much sugar. So how is the strawberry making itself taste so sweet? Incredibly, strawberries have altered the way they taste using the power of smell. 36 aroma molecules deceive our brains into thinking we're tasting a lot more sugar than we are. Imagine if we could replicate this clever trick in other foods. Then we'd be able to produce satisfyingly sweet-tasting treats using a lot less sugar. Our sense of taste is not just about attracting us to what's good to eat and when. It's also evolved ways to help us avoid foods that can kill us. Take the seeds in fruit. Even a few crushed cherry or plum seeds can produce enough cyanide in the gut to cause paralysis, liver, and kidney damage. Rhubarb leaves contain the same chemical used to make bleach. And just 5 raw, uncooked kidney beans contain enough phytohemagglutinin to bring on vomiting, nausea, and diarrhea. Eating can be a dangerous business. James has come to Peru, where there's an everyday food you might not expect to be a threat.
The world is full of things that look like they could be interesting to eat. But some things might not be such a good idea. Take the potato, for instance. Is it friend or foe?
The potato plant originated in South America, but most of these wild potatoes would have been completely left alone because of their intensely sharp, bitter taste.
Potatoes belong to the deadly nightshade family, which is packed full of species that are super toxic. It tastes incredibly bitter. Bad idea to do what I'm doing. I barely punctured this with my teeth, and already a bitter bloom is going throughout my mouth that makes me want to spit it out instantly. That's my sense of taste telling me instantly, this is not good for you. Get rid of it.
Bitter has a crucial role to play in our survival. It's a warning sign.
Your sense of taste is really a complex chemical detector that allows healthy, good-for-you foods in and keeps toxic things out.
The potato uses this to protect itself from being eaten.
See all this green blush over the surface? That's evidence it's started to grow and produce solanine. They generally are packed in young growing tips to help protect the plant even more. So I'm going to try this sprouted potato, and it should be even worse. God, why did I do that?
Because the consequences of eating poison can be so deadly, we have 25 types of bitter receptor, all on the lookout for toxins. 10 times more than we have for sweet.
Because sweet is nice, but bitter can be deadly. Let's spit this out. Try it.
So if the original potatoes were poisonous, how did they become such an important part of our diet? Surprisingly, we have the Inca to thank. This is the Sacred Valley of the Inca in Peru. James has traveled here as there are more varieties of potatoes than anywhere else on the planet. In fact, they've been growing potatoes here for thousands of years. And this is where the poisonous solanine was gradually brought out.
You know, when people talk about the Inca, they tend to mention lost cities and temples and gold. But all of this has nothing to do with power or status. Everything you see here only exists to grow crops, and king amongst them, the potato.
But for the Quechua people who live high in the Andes, the battle to tame the poisonous spud is still being fought. This is Martin Calisaya, whose family live in the village of Tastoyoc, located 13,000 feet high in the mountains. Their lives depend on the potato because almost nothing else will grow at this altitude. So spuds provide virtually all their nutrition, and they grow a huge variety to survive in this harsh environment.
Martín, nunca he visto tantas papas en toda mi vida. ¿Cuántas hay aquí?
Más de 100 variedades.
But even with 100 different varieties, a hard frost could spell disaster. So as a precaution, they also grow the hardiest known potato in the world, one that can survive even the toughest winter. The only downside? They're bitter, poisonous, and inedible, packed full of deadly solanine.
The incredible thing is that people from the Andes have developed an ingenious technology that turns poison into dinner.
The trick is to freeze dry the potatoes so they can be stored for years.
In order to get maximum freeze factor, the Quechua need to find the very coldest spot, and that means going right up there.
Once a year, the Calisaya family haul their crop of inedible bitter potatoes to a site that's 1,000 feet higher than the village, ready to begin a food processing technique that dates back around 2,000 years. At 14,000 feet, they reach the corral where the potatoes will be processed.
Growing potatoes the traditional way is incredibly labor intensive. But here, you get to haul the stuff up a mountain, and in this thin air, even just the act of spacing them apart so frost gets to them is killing me.
At night, the temperature plummets. Ice crystals form throughout the potato, rupturing the cell walls. This allows the poisonous solanine to drain out.
After a night out in sub-zero temperatures, these guys are frozen solid.
Up to 80% of the deadly solanine is produced close to the skin, and the treading process breaks the skins enough to allow an escape route for the poison. During the day when the scorching sun is high in the sky, the potatoes begin to thaw. With the cell walls ruptured and the skins broken, water drains out, carrying the deadly solanine with it, leaving a dried, shriveled product known as chuño.
This is it. This is the end result. And okay, they might not look irresistible, but this is magic. In this form, they can be stored for a decade and still be eaten. It is the ultimate in food security.
So even if the winter destroys the bulk of their crop, Martin and his family will be sure to have enough food.
Muchísimas gracias. Muy amable. Bien calentito. Muy rico, bueno, lo agarro todo. A mí también.
¿Qué te parece?
¿Sabes qué? Para ser honesto, de verlo, no estuve muy convencido, pero el sabor es buenísimo.
Sí.
The flavor's great. It's kind of a floury, like a chestnut, like a roasted chestnut, but with kind of smoky, oaky richness to it. I'm kind of saying. La verdad es que es buenísimo.
The Quechua have learned to outsmart the incredible bitterness of poisonous potatoes. Thanks to their ingenious process, over hundreds of generations, nearly all the bitter solanine has been bred out of the humble potato we eat today. How we experience our food is far more than just enjoying what we eat. It's actually a powerful survival mechanism.
Our sense of taste evolved to guide us through a very different world to the one we live in now. It was a world where things that tasted sweet were good for us because they gave us instant energy, and where things that were bitter were often bad because they might be poisonous. In the modern world, of course, is often the other way round. There's another really important taste which is also often confused by the modern world. It is a taste which is both an invitation and a warning. It is salt. We're so used to the taste of salt that we sometimes forget just how weird it is. Let me show you something which is really quite surprising. I'm going to whiz up some coffee. Bit of boiling water. I've got a fresh brewed coffee here. Let's give it a go. And that is really quite bitter. Here we go. Now that's quite strange because that's very different. The bitterness has been removed. It doesn't actually make it pleasanter, I have to say. It just makes it very different. Because oddly what is happening is that the sodium in the salt is blocking the bitter receptors. And so it really doesn't taste anything like as bitter as it did, which for me is a shame because I actually like bitter coffee. But if you don't, it's a very neat trick.
And it's this ability to make food more palatable, more delicious, that gives salt such a powerful hold over us. And we've evolved a liking for salt because it's essential to life. Billions of years ago, life evolved in the oceans. Exactly how it began, no one knows. But as the first simple cells took shape, they entrapped a little bit of the salty water inside themselves. Today, every cell in our bodies still carries a little salty water, a distant echo of our ancient origins in the sea.
Seawater might taste terrible, but the taste of a little bit of salt has this universal appeal. We like it because we need it. Salt is vital for life.
James is in Brittany, France, where they have been coaxing salt out of the ocean for thousands of years. This landscape has been utterly transformed over time, as natural salt marshes have been painstakingly sculpted into a vast network of evaporation ponds. Sophie Bonnet-Castillo is one of 250 salt farmers tending to their own network of ponds, each called a salina.
It's a traditional way because it has started in the 9th century. The technique is really the same.
When the tide is high, seawater flows 3 miles from the ocean into a reservoir. It's then channeled through a patchwork of ponds, every one just slightly lower than the last. As the water moves down from one pond to the next, it becomes more concentrated until it's 10 times as salty as it started. And then from the briny water, salt crystals emerge.
I'm collecting very famous salt of Guérande that is crystallizing at the bottom of the pond directly on clay.
The highly prized, beautiful crystalline flakes of salt contain more moisture than common salt, which means the taste lingers for much longer. And being unrefined, other minerals like calcium and magnesium chloride give it a more complex flavor. It's the taste of the sea.
And this is it. This is the end result. After billions of years, our bodies still rely on the same basic chemistry that evolved in those first blobs of life in the sea.
Inside the body, salt controls the amount of water in each cell. Where there's more salt, water will go. It's a process called osmosis. It makes cells swell and shrink. Elsewhere, the sodium in salt is crucial for the functioning of our nerves. It's the movement of trillions of sodium ions in our brain that allows us to think, move, and sense the world around us. And these sodium ions also affect our taste buds. Not just bitter, but sweet too.
As well as the finest salt, Brittany is also home to caramel or beurre salé, salted caramel. You know that stuff that's taken the world by storm over recent years? We are hardwired to love sugar and hardwired to love salt separately. But when you put them together, something magical happens.
The sodium in a tiny amount of salt actually makes sugar taste sweeter. Because alongside our regular sweet receptors, we have some additional receptors that are only activated when both sugar and salt are present. So for the maximum sweet sensation, seek out the salty taste combinations found in ice cream, sweets, chocolate, and of course, the gooey liquid filling inside a thin French pancake. A crepe.
It's not polite. It's delicious.
Salt. Bitter. umami. Together, these 5 tastes form the foundation for our experience of food.
Because we put food in our mouths, we tend to think of all the action happening there on the taste buds. But in fact, when we experience it, we also see it, and critically, we smell it. And it's all of that which adds up to what we call flavour.
Curiously, flavor isn't just about taste, it's also about the nose. And James has come to Burgundy, France, where there's a kind of food that is famously defined by its nose. Cheese. Which is odd because most cheese starts out life the same way, smelling of almost nothing.
So this is where it all begins. For someone who's used to knowing cows on packets in supermarkets, it's a dose of reality for me.
To make cheese, naturally occurring lactic acid is added to fresh cow's milk and it's allowed to curdle. Then the fragile curds are put into molds where the liquid whey runs off.
You can take more cheese.
Okay, in bigger scoops.
Whey, yes, very good.
These curds will become the finished cheese, but it begins with very little taste and no smell. And yet from this beginning, the French produce more than 400 different kinds of cheese, each with their own unique flavor.
Oh, whoa! That's intense. It's like a furry animal.
So how do all these distinctive cheeses end up being so different? More than anything else, the flavor of each cheese is determined by the way it smells.
Take a bit of cheese, and you cover up your nose. It means now I can't smell anything, but I can still taste. This cocktail, which is normally incredible, it's like eating a salty candle. You have this waxy texture, you have a bit of salt, a bit of bitterness, but it's like eating a black and white. It is incredible. The second you uncover your nose, this rush of complexity and flavor comes back. It's like eating in Technicolor. The massive difference between the thousands of different types of cheese on the planet is all about smell.
This simple experiment reveals the powerful effect smell can have on the flavor of food. And to better understand how each cheese gets its own aroma, James is about to have an encounter with a notoriously pungent one.
It's the cheese known as the king of cheeses, Napoleon's favorite, and one of the world's smelliest. There are stories that this stuff smells so bad that it was actually banned from the Paris metro. Nice.
It's a soft, rind-washed cow's cheese called époisse. But what is responsible for making its uniquely powerful smell? For it to develop, the embryonic cheese needs salt, it needs time, and it needs bacteria. Each cheese starts its journey of transformation with a specific type of bacteria. But it's how these young cheeses are treated next that creates their flavor and texture. With époisse, the rinds are regularly washed with watered-down pomace brandy, made from the skin, seeds, and stalks of grapes left after winemaking.
It's very fragile.
Yeah.
So you take it slowly.
Okay.
The brandy imparts some of its own flavor to the cheese, but most importantly, it affects which bacteria thrive on the cheese.
Pas trop d'eau.
Not too hard, okay?
One kind of bacteria is called Athrobacter aurelitensis, which builds long-chain molecules that make the rind go orange. Another is Brevibacterium linens. These break down the proteins in the cheese into smaller molecules. including stinky sulfur compounds that give the cheese its funky, sweaty aroma. Its closely related cousin, Brevibacterium epidermidis, can be found growing on human feet, giving them their funky, sweaty aroma.
Voila. Ooh. You weren't kidding about the way it smells. It's intense. It's kind of sulfur-like. It's kind of an instant flashback to the rugby socks I left in a PE kit once in school for a whole week.
Volatile aroma molecules from cheese or feet float into the air and get sucked up into your nose. Each smell compound stimulates a unique combination of receptors that allow us to identify the smell. In the case of Epoisse, it's a smell of stinky feet that's not particularly pleasant or appetizing. So why, if it smells so bad, would anyone put it in their mouth?
But when you eat it, something magical happens. The aroma compounds are released in your mouth and they waft up the back of your nose. And they're detected there by the same smell detectors. But weirdly, your brain perceives them as very different from if you were to smell forward and sniff them up the front of your nose.
It's called backward smelling. Rather than simply smelling the stink, the brain now combines the smell with the creamy taste it's experiencing on the tongue at the same time. This combination of taste and smell has a dramatic effect on how we perceive a particular odor molecule. And for the full effect, always eat the rind, since this is where many of the smells lie.
This stuff no longer is pungent and kind of animalic like your body. And suddenly, sharp, garlicky, eggy. It's just warming, comforting deliciousness.
This is the full flavor experience. Only by combining taste and backward smells in our brain do we unlock our food's full flavor potential.
Pretty normally, in there.
We may have only 5 types of taste receptors on our tongue, but our noses are packed with around 400 different smell detectors. But will Michael be able to identify one of his favorite meals by smell alone?
Whoa, that was strong. This one, for some reason, is making me such wet Macintoshes.
The twist is Michael's not going to eat anything.
Quite aromatic.
Instead, he's going to be inhaling individual wafts of each aroma of this mystery meal.
Smells almost fecal. I'm trying to work it out. That's weird. Almost aniseedy. Smells damp basement smell. Not like you can say that's lemon or that's pine cone or they're sort of spicy.
It's only when all the smells are brought together at the end of the test that Michael can finally take a guess.
Would you like to smell this one?
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's strong. So that is definitely curry and it smells like, is that chicken korma?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We broke down all the aroma components of this curry and you smell them the one
One
after the other.
But I couldn't put them all together.
Yeah, no, there are many spices, so you can get many spicy notes, many meaty notes, some strange notes like rose, like potato, and pigsty.
Maybe it was kind of pigsty. I was funny at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very odd having them as kind of distinctive things and then trying to add them up to something. I would never ever have guessed that was chicken korma. And yet when I smell that, I know straight away chicken korma. It just smells like it.
Yep.
It's kind of one of the things I'm quite familiar with. Yeah.
This experiment reveals how our noses help us enjoy food. Rather than singling out individual notes, all the individual aromas come together to form one unified, instantly identifiable, and delicious smell. Using just 400 different smell receptors, our noses are so powerfully tuned that it's been estimated we can identify 1 trillion different smells. Like pizza, roast chicken, or a fine red wine. In our search for ever more delicious and satisfying things to indulge our senses, we've created extraordinary processes that alter the taste, texture, and aroma of our food. Michael has come to Tuscany, Italy, to examine the one process that has changed the course of civilization.
It has transformed our experience and our enjoyment of food. It is, of course, cooking.
There's evidence our remote ancestors began cooking food at least 400,000 years ago. And from the start, they were unwittingly triggering in our food one of the most complex chemical reactions on Earth.
Now this is a truly wonderful piece of meat. It's a local speciality known as bistecca fiorentina. Now in its raw state like this, it really doesn't smell
so complex, it would take up an entire book to describe it. Our understanding of food and how it seduces our senses is deepening all the time. In the past, when eating the wrong thing could be a threat, our senses guided us to swallow what was nourishing and to spit out what might harm us. For modern humans, though, taste is no longer merely a guide to survival. Today, we transform food in ways that our ancestors would never have recognized. To create combinations that stimulate our eyes, noses, and all our taste buds to create the ultimate mouthful of flavor.
These days, taste is mainly about pleasure, the enjoyment in food. And it's that enjoyment which brings communities and families together. It's because we really understand what makes food work, that we're able to create unusual combinations, really make our taste buds zing.
How often do you stop and really think about your food? Why does it taste the way it does? And how does it affect your body and your mind? In search of answers, two experts will take you on a global culinary adventure. Medical Dr. Michael Mosley
My eyes are already beginning to water and my pulse is shooting up.
And botanist James Wong
I can do this all day.
will discover the hidden science in every mouthful.
This is incredible. It's like eating in Technicolor.
This time, they're on a mission to go deep inside the foods we simply can't live without. The carbohydrates that give us energy. The fats that insulate our brain cells. The proteins that build our bodies.
It's got to be the world's best comfort food.
And the vitamins and minerals that are vital to our health. How do we get the right balance? And why are they so essential to our survival?
This is delicious science.
Across the world, food comes in a bewildering range of shapes, colors, and flavors. But there was a time early on in our lives when things were much simpler. When we lived and thrived on just one type of food.
Chances are this is the first food you ever consumed. It's human breast milk. Now, what's amazing about this stuff is that it contains all the nutrients a baby needs to grow and thrive. Fed on nothing but breast milk, a baby will double in weight in just 5 months.
So how can this precious liquid provide everything a baby needs to grow and prosper? To find out, Michael's going to deconstruct it. He starts by putting around 7 fluid ounces, a few feeds for a newborn, into a centrifuge. A quick strain, and the first chemical in the milk is visible.
Now, this contains around 8 grams of fat, about the same amount as you'd find in a bag of crisps.
Fat that's essential for building a baby's nerve tissues and the smooth running of their brain.
What's left is this skimmed milk, which is mainly water, but which also includes another vital ingredient.
Michael will make it appear by adding a few drops of vinegar.
Now I need to filter it.
This is protein, essential for building a baby's body. He's left with a solution of vitamins, minerals, and one last major component.
Now I'm going to do something slightly weird because I haven't tasted breast milk since I was a baby. Surprisingly sweet, though I guess it shouldn't be surprising because about 7% of that is made up of lactose, which is a sugar, a form of carbohydrate. And babies need carbohydrate, they need an instant source of accessible energy.
So this mix of carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals in breast milk is all a baby needs to survive.
And the funny thing is that as we get older, it doesn't really change. They just come to us in different forms of food.
As adults, we're presented with a huge range of different foods to choose from. So how do we go about getting the right balance of fat, protein, carbs, vitamins, and minerals? And which are absolutely essential for our survival? Every morning, all over the globe, we wake up ready for food. We rise with our blood sugar low and the same need, quick energy. Be it toast, cereal, or rice, most of us turn to the same type of food for that first meal of the day, carbohydrates.
Did I snore? Outside. Carbohydrates are fantastically diverse. It's really sort of a catch-all terminology for a group of chemicals that are made up of building blocks of sugar.
There are many different types: glucose, lactose, and probably the most exciting one to us, starch.
It's what plants use to store away their energies in a concentrated format. And round here, it's usually found in the form of a seed stolen from a grass.
Oryza sativa, better known as the rice plant. Each seed is a grain of rice, a marvel of nature. But rice doesn't give up its energy easily. These terraces here in Banawi are called by some the eighth wonder of the world. The people who live in these mountains have been cultivating rice for over 2,000 years. Although James's family originally came from this region, he's never farmed rice before.
I feel like Superman to be able to do this.
As the farmers work the terraces, they're burning calories, a measurement of energy. Even at rest, our bodies need fuel to keep going. Just standing still, we burn about 100 calories an hour. But while working the fields, that number jumps up to around 350.
I'm waiting for my Asian rice farmer genes to kick in. I don't think they work.
Our bodies get energy from food, and carbohydrate-rich ones like rice give us fuel more quickly than any other type. The body breaks down long carbohydrate chains into a simple sugar, glucose. It's quickly and easily absorbed in the blood and transported around the body, feeding our muscles and our organs. Carbs are the rocket fuel in our diets. Growing rice by hand requires lots of energy. Harvesting the stuff is labor intensive. We can burn over 400 calories an hour. So we have to be sure we're getting a lot more energy from eating it than it takes to produce it.
So after 6 months of loving care and hundreds of labor hours, you end up with this beautiful stuff. Raw rice. I still wouldn't call it a food though.
All this effort begs the question, why do we bother with rice at all?
The reason why rice is such a phenomenally important food is the sheer amount of energy that is packed into each one of these tiny grains. And I can actually show you how much energy they have visually, but first, I gotta break them open.
Grinding the rice tears the tightly packed starch chains apart, making the energy in the carbohydrates easier to unleash.
This stuff might not look very exciting, but it's packed full of energy. You can convert the potential energy that's stored in the rice grains into heat and light energy just by doing this.
Each puff is around 1/3 of an ounce.
I can do this all day.
And contains about 35 calories of energy, all going up in flames. And almost all of it comes from carbohydrates.
Now our bodies might not do this in the exact same way because we use complex biochemistry to do it.
And rice doesn't give up its energy without a fight. But we have discovered another way to harness its power.
Even once fully processed, rice is essentially indigestible because starch really stubbornly holds on to its energy until you do this.
Cooking is the game changer. The starch in the rice is made up of two energy-giving carbohydrate molecules, amylose and amylopectin. But their long chains are packed together, making them mostly indigestible. The combination of heat and water has the power to break the tangled chains apart. This chemistry is going on inside every grain. And magnified 600 times, we can see the effect on the cells as the boiling water makes them swell. Even the moment when they burst open and the digestible carbs erupt. So turning rice into a food is incredibly energy intensive. A cupful takes about 70 calories to produce. But we got 35 calories from just a third of an ounce, which means a cup of rice gives back around 700 calories. We get a whopping 10 times more energy out than we put in. And that's why rice, a cultivated rivergrass, has become such an important staple in the water-rich tropics. Where it's too cold or too dry to grow rice, we in the Western world have turned to another crop for our carb hit: wheat. Most of the wheat we consume comes in the form of bread. And this city is famous for one particular type of bread: sourdough.
I've been doing this for 37 years. The minute I touched dough, I fell in love with it. This is what I want to do. No matter if you're rich, poor, or anything, you're making something wonderful for everybody.
It begins with unprocessed wheat flour. A bland, tasteless powder that, if cooked, would set like concrete. To turn it into a tasty food, Fernando Padilla employs an army of microbes. These microbes live in something affectionately known as the mother dough.
See, this is where she lives. As you can tell, we said mother dough lives here. We gotta put an address here, you know, but wow. I'm carrying a piece of history here. Yeah.
The mother dough is a mix of water and flour, more commonly known as a starter. Inside it, a community of live yeast cells and bacteria thrive. But this is no ordinary starter. It's reported to be the oldest in the U.S.
And this goes back to 1849, does it?
So imagine for over 165 years ago, it's the same dough. So a little tiny piece still dates back to the same family.
This starter was, apparently, created by immigrants to California during the Great Gold Rush.
Inhale. That's all the sweetness of the flour being fermented. You know, it creates all this alcohol flavor, but it all evaporates. You see how strong it is?
I was expecting something nice.
This little thing is going to give us like 400 loaves of bread. Let's bring it up.
Every day, half of the mother dough is fed with flour and water. Then it's locked away in a refrigerator overnight, where it regenerates, doubling in size.
Good night, Mummy.
See you tomorrow. This is 200 pounds of flour here.
The other half of the mother dough will be used to create over 400 loaves of delicious fresh bread.
We should have worn the apron.
Adding water activates enzymes in the flour. This in turn starts a complex biochemical cascade, which begins with starch in the flour turning into a sugar called maltose.
Mix it for 10 minutes.
Bacteria from the mother dough now feed greedily on the maltose, breaking it down into glucose. The bacteria have begun to digest the flour for us.
You hear that? When you hear the dough popping, yeah. Talks back to you. Hey, I'm ready. Get me out of here.
If it was baked now, this would turn out as flat as a pancake.
Well, that's probably not looking like yours.
Now we'll just fold it over.
Yep.
Fortunately, another group of microbes will use some of the glucose to transform the dough.
Okay, this is dried yeast. Doesn't look incredibly exciting, does it? But every single grain there contains thousands of these single-celled organisms, and they're held currently in a state of suspended animation. I am about to bring them back to life. To do that, they need food and water. So I'm going to add sugar and then water. And now I add the yeast.
If the yeast cells are still alive, they'll produce a gas which passes through the pipe to the test tube.
Within there, those yeast cells are springing back to life, and they're going to get stuck into that sugar. So it's working. You can see the bubbles being produced there. They're actually being created by the yeast coupling up the sugar, producing carbon dioxide gas, which you can see bubbling up. And it's this reaction which is absolutely key to producing a nice fluffy loaf.
With carbon dioxide bubbling through his bread mix, Fernando must now stop the gas escaping. And to do that, he alters the chemical structure of the dough by a process called kneading.
Now, I'm not an expert baker at all, but I know the secret to making good bread is getting really sure you knead it thoroughly.
When we knead bread, we are forcing two proteins inside the flour, gliadin and glutenin, to form bonds, creating a tough new substance, gluten. And this is where the art of bread making comes in. If you don't knead enough, then you won't create enough gluten in your loaf. So the gases will escape, and it won't rise. But get it just right, and the effect on the loaf is magical. As it rises, the volume more than doubles as the yeast consume the glucose and blow bubbles inside their gluten home. The bacteria also produce a small amount of lactic acid, and with no added sugar, the acid gives the loaf the distinctive tang of sourdough bread. Baking then seals the air pockets, and thanks to the microbes from the mother dough, we end up with a carb-rich, light, fluffy loaf.
Whoa, wow. Hey.
Even,
how many loaves is that?
This is about 100 loaves of bread.
Perfect.
It's incredible.
Sourdough used to be one of the most popular forms of bread until it got displaced by cheap mass-produced stuff. And that seems like a shame because it's tasty, it's also healthier. It hasn't got added sugars, and the acid in the bread means that you're much better able to absorb the minerals and the vitamins that are locked up in the flour. In fact, I think I'm going to try baking some when I get home.
From the east to the west, by unlocking the secrets of rice and wheat, our ancestors made the indigestible digestible. These days, carbs have a mixed reputation, and low-carb diets are all the rage. Many reduce or eliminate them entirely from their diet. But our modern world would simply not have been possible without these key staples. But unlike carbs, we cannot live without protein. Our bodies make at least 250,000 different types of protein molecules. These build everything from hormones and enzymes to electrical pathways in the brain, and our hair, skin, and muscles. To do this, we need plenty of protein from food to work with, requiring us to eat around 50 grams a day. The body breaks down this protein into its basic building blocks, from which we can build new proteins. And one of the world's favorite sources of high-quality protein is eggs. Michael's going to deconstruct an egg to reveal exactly what is inside.
Right, so I'm just going to prise off a little bit of shell, and there it is. And as you can see, it's hard, crystalline, and made up mainly of calcium carbonate.
Here, magnified over 2,000 times, we can see the surface of the shell is covered in lots of tiny holes. There, so a developing chick can breathe. Each hole is formed over a gap in a lattice of protein that the shell grows over. Surprisingly, this membrane is partly made from a tough protein called keratin, the same stuff our hair and nails are made from. It protects the contents of the egg from bacteria and dust. Inside, the white, or albumin,